That's right, you geeks. Welcome into the Echo Screen, the official podcast of the Clan of the Grey Wolf. As always, I am your host. What are you laughing at? How are you laughing already? The show has started.
I liked my idea before the podcast. Welcome to the Federalist Papers, your all Alexander Hamilton podcast.
You're still laughing about that?
Tonight, Federalist Paper number 32, the same subject continued, concerning the general power of taxation. The third of 7 essays by Hamilton on the then controversial issue of taxation. Yeah, I looked that up.
Of course you did.
It's fun. Oh, I'm sorry. What are we doing here? Doing a podcast?
It's a show. Yeah, It's a show. It's a live show. We do a live show on the internet bi-weekly.
We must be really important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we were really important, it'd probably be weekly.
I know we gotta. You know what though? Or Shurok in the chat has a very important point. We need to put a stop to these unofficial Clan of the Grey Wolf podcasts.
Yeah, I agree.
There's just too many of them. Just piggybacking off
really
of our
I know.
extreme.
Could you tell we were overly ambitious when we started doing this program?
What do you mean we were? Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I don't know. Something about a program, a show we're supposed to do.
Okay, that sounds about right.
Today? Yeah. I'll tell you what we were not talking about was Hamilton. All right, so we are not going to talk about Hamilton, nor the Federalist Papers, nor anything remotely regarding the American Revolution. Although we might talk about the British one.
Brexit. Welcome to your Brexit podcast.
Brexit. This is the news. This is your news at 9. No, we are actually going to talk about the future
of Apple.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was just trying to be dramatic.
Okay, so in case you haven't noticed by now, we kind of tend to we generally come up with our own topics and then bounce it off the other person. So, like the last one we did was the what did we do last time? The Internet Echo Chamber. That was one I came up with, and Commodore was like, "Yeah, let's do that." This one, I'm like, "Hey, you got a topic you want to do?" And he's like, "Future of Apple." I'm like, "Sure, let's do that." And I was actually thinking, like, maybe should we expand it to like the future of these big tech companies? But we kind of talked with that whole Silicon Valley bubble thing. I was like, you know what? There's enough to talk about with Apple. We'll do that.
Well, you know what? We can pose our questions, our hypothetical questions about Apple's future, and we can wrap them in the context of these other tech companies. How does that sound?
All right, let's do that.
Best of both worlds. All right. It's almost like we planned this.
Ooh, that's a good episode.
Best of both worlds. This is a great episode. So that is the topic du jour on this here program here, folks. We're going to talk about the future of Apple and how excited we are or not excited we are about it. I happen to refer to it when I tweeted before about don't miss the Android fanboy hour. So I'm sure there will be plenty of bias to go around. But anyway, we'll try to, as we always do, remain as unbiased as we can.
Which is funny because you used to be the biggest Apple fanboy.
I still am. Look, hey man, look, don't hate. Don't hate. Come on, mate.
It looks like you just held up a whiteboard as far as we can tell.
Oh, sorry. Here. Let me pull it back there.
Oh, there you go. No, still looks like a whiteboard, but that's fine.
Well, whatever. It's a MacBook Pro, for Christ's sake. All right, so
la-di-da.
La-di frickin' da.
Anyway.
There are, however, 2 additional portions of the program in case you've never seen it before. First, we do the tids and bits, the news and notes, things we think you should know something about. We'll talk about those. We've limited it to 1 for both of us, maybe even just 1 tonight, period, because we've got something big to talk about. And then number 3, the third portion of the program, which happens to be question and answer. If you'd like to ask a question about the topic du jour, any of the tids and bits, or life in general, all you have to do is, if you're following along in the chat, click my name, Commodore 128, send me a private message, because that's how I like them. Or you can tweet at It's the Commodore. Just as good.
Almost.
I will take all of the best questions. And by the way, there are already some pretty solid questions that I've gotten. But you don't have to wait to the question and answer portion of the program to tweet and or send your question that we will answer live in the air if it's good enough. All right? That's what we're doing here.
I believe you.
That's what we're doing.
So
that is what we're doing.
Are you tidding or bidding first, or am I?
Why don't you go first, since we kind of had the same one, so I'll see if we have time for another one.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into our pre-show discussion, or and throw you off.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a quick one, but I happened to see on Reddit literally hours ago that on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, perhaps you've heard of him.
No.
Well, he's a guy, but he will.
Is he the guy that took over for Jon Stewart?
Yes,
Yeah.
on Showtime.
Yeah.
Yes, and anyway,
The Showtime. Thank you.
the show Space Time.
Exactly.
Yes, it's on channel 468 on your local cable provider. Anyway, I've no
Over the air.
what the hell are we doing? Anyway,
I don't know.
the point
I don't
is,
even know.
my actual
This joke was never good to begin with, and we're making it.
my actual point was that this Friday, Speed Runner, the video game Speed Runner, Mitch Flower Power. We gotta love these internet names, right, Commodore? Silly.
Yeah, come on.
Will be speed running Super Mario Brothers 3 this Friday on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on CBS.
What is the fastest speed run of Super Mario 3? Can you give me an approximation? Is it 3 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? What is it?
Well, let's see. Dr. Google tells me that the fastest speed run of Mario Brothers 3 on YouTube, at least, not tool assisted, looks to be about 11 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe.
That's good.
Or no, maybe 5 minutes.
Wow, that's quite a difference.
Wait, no, maybe 3 minutes.
Okay, so if they're going to be speed running, so they'll probably be in that 5 minute range unless they do something.
No, I'm
perfect.
sorry. Okay, actually going to the thing, it's Mitch Flower Power, which makes sense. His time, non-tool assisted speed run is 3 minutes, 8 seconds.
That's insanity.
I'm going to have to look at that after this show.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Looking that way.
okay, so that's interesting that this would be on such a widely distributed mainstream show as The Late Show.
Even though Stephen Colbert is pretty well outed as a nerd at this point,
Well,
right?
I mean,
Doesn't he
sure,
have the-
but I mean, who watches late shows on network TV besides like the average age has got to be 50, probably, right?
yeah.
I'm pulling that out of my butt.
It's skewed too because like the only time I ever watched those shows was when I was in college and I happened to be up that late and I just didn't give a
man,
crap.
You are a wild man. Calm down
Well,
there.
Yeah, I know. What do you want me to do here?
You know what? This is completely unrelated. I was talking to people last night who were surprised that we went to a university that had mixed gendered dorms.
I thought you were going to say that had no air conditioning.
That I did live in a room with no air conditioning as well.
Isn't that funny? You're going to tell your grandkids that someday, and they're going to be like, "What?
Like, God, Grandpa, you're old as crap.
God, you're old as crap."
I don't know why they
no
sound
air
old.
conditioning. That's the way it was in the 1850s.
No, but that's what I'm saying is like these people were like, oh, what? You had gender mixing in your dorms? I'm like, well, yeah, not in the same room, but it's like on the same floor, you'd have a girl's suite and a guy's suite. It's not the 1850s. Whatever.
My dorm had floors though. I had like the girls' floor.
Did
girls' floor. Yeah.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
But didn't
girls' floor, guys' floor, girls' floor, girls' floor.
But hold on, you had the bathroom on the floor. You guys had to share, right? Because you were in an old building, right? You did not have your own.
It was a women's bathroom because it was built as an all women's dorm.
Well,
So
you're getting far afield. My point is that you had to have the separate gendered floors because you all had to share the same bathroom, right?
Right.
That was the purpose.
And it was because they were trying to put men for the first time
in
an all women's dorm.
And your dorm was built in like what, 1950 something probably?
1923.
Old as crap. I was in eventually a brand new dorm, and what they had were these suite systems. It was 2 rooms and a bathroom in the middle, and so it didn't matter. It's like girls on this set and guys over here, and it just mixed back and forth because who cares,
Yep.
Plus the fact that you could just badge in, badge out whenever you want. There was no curfew.
Yeah.
Having a curfew at a college sounds weird unless you're like at a really super religious college. Anyway, so and that's why
We could have a college episode. We should have a college episode.
and that's why I bring up speed running. So anyway, what was your tidbit?
Yeah. Wow. Number one, that was not quick. Number two, it was. I think you might have spent a tenth of the time talking about the topic. I was going to talk about the particularly good, I thought, final or season finale of Game of Thrones.
Did that happen?
It did.
I didn't hear anything about it. Weird.
Oh, well, you missed something good.
Oh,
You missed something
Game
good.
of Game of Thrones, you say?
Game of Thrones. It's a niche show. Not a lot of people
On
have heard.
Is it on the Showtime channel
No,
358?
it's not on the Showtime.
Public
No,
access?
It's on Skinamax.
Oh. Well,
So obviously, I mean, I'm super. Here's the funny thing. So we won't spoil anything right now. I'm just super pumped now to read The Winds of Winter.
oh
That's
yeah.
the way.
Oh, that's how I feel. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first, my takeaways. So the last episode 10, the most recent, the season finale of season 6, I think is my favorite episode of the series.
It's also an hour and 15 minutes long or something. An hour
And
and 12.
it was awesome top to bottom.
It really was.
Anyone, and I know I saw you.
Even
I've
the
seen,
Dorne scene was good.
it was awesome. You
Isn't that
people,
crazy?
I know you people on Reddit. I've seen you. You folks who are still poo-pooing the show, and you're like, it's fan fiction. It's not real like the books. After episodes like that, you're haters forever.
Also, everyone
There's nothing that
that
can be done to make you happy at this point.
To piggyback on your point, also every single person that said they were going to leave the show because of the atrocities of the rape stuff that was going on with some of the female characters, if you are still watching, you should be eating your own hat, because this show has paid off in droves.
Without spoiling anything, yeah,
in incredible ways. And I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just telling you, if you gave up because of that, you really, really missed out on the whole point of what I think George Martin is doing with several characters in his books.
But honestly, if you have not, I know we talk about Game of Thrones probably a bit too much on this general podcast. But if you have not watched it yet, you really should. Like, you can get HBO now for free for a month this summer. Just do it. Burn through all 6 seasons, and if you are not entertained, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah. And I'll tell you and I did a show where I tried to convince you to watch it.
Yeah.
And I will tell the peoples out there the same thing I told you. You got to kind of suffer a little bit through the first season, not because the first season's bad, but because they're appealing to a demographic that doesn't really exist. They were just trying to be kind of as far out there as they could. Like, this show is on HBO.
Well, yeah, but also to be fair,
they get over that, and it gets really good.
So much exposition that needs to be laid out in the first season. So many characters.
I have no problem with exposition. What I have a problem with is
well, you don't.
No, but I don't have a problem. I guess what I'm saying is, I never had a problem getting into the show because of the exposition, although there are a metric ton of characters. The issue that I had with the show is how gratuitous it was. This is HBO. We are going to put no other network could have had this, could have taken this show, because we are going to take it to the extreme. It's like, it's gratuitous nudity, all kinds of cursing that almost doesn't fit. It's like the dirtiest, grimiest show on TV for like the first season and a half, and then it turns into magnificence, where you have, those kinds of things happen as they would happen kind of naturally, right? In the normal course of human events.
That brings me to the Federalist Paper number 48.
Damn it, I knew that was good. Should never have said that. Anyway, it just makes sense narratively.
Yes, and I'm just going to say, I think that the whole episode, but the first 20-25 minutes in particular of this past episode is probably some of the finest shot television ever produced.
Do you think
it's absolutely astounding? The cinematography, the music, the acting, the writing, the music, so good.
The music in this episode is, I actually need to go listen to just the score from this episode, which is on YouTube, I've heard. It's just magnificent.
Yeah.
Magnificent.
So very excited for not only Winds of Winter, but also the next couple seasons. So,
but that's what's interesting, because I now, obviously so much of what's happened is spoiling what is going to happen in the Winds of Winter. But
potentially.
How many times? Because you've been through the books as I did, right? You did you ever stop? There was probably 4 or 5 moments during the season where I said, that is ridiculous. There's no way in hell that happens that way in the books. Did you do that?
Well, anything could happen in the books.
It's not that. I mean something hackneyed, sped up, short.
You know what? That's what people. Okay, this isn't much of a spoiler because it's over a year that this happened in the show. But a certain person burns a certain other person at the stake. Okay.
Yes.
It happens at the end of last season, and
Yes.
and the book readers were livid on the forums. They're like, "This is terrible. They ruined this character." Blah blah blah. And then it basically comes out. Yeah, that's actually kind of going to happen in the next book. Spoiler. But the point is like, if you look at it at first, you're like, oh, I wouldn't have expected that to happen. Then you sit and you think about it, and you're like, actually, no, that does kind of make sense. And so that's how a lot of the stuff that is happening now in this past season, which is past the book mostly.
I'll give you an example because
Okay.
I think you're not hitting on what I'm talking about.
I'll hit on you.
Okay. Well, what are you doing later? So there is a character that returns that has yet to make an emergence in the books yet.
A character.
Okay? A character who returns that has yet to make an appearance in the book yet. And there is another character in the books that
I know what
has
you're
never
talking
yet
about.
arrived in the show. So what happened was it seems to me like when I was watching it, I went, this doesn't make any sense. Why is this person appearing now? And why are they just playing this one little part and then they're gone? And you kind of go,
Setting something
there's
up.
no way this happens this way in the books. And what you can tell is that they basically took two different characters,
Sure.
merged it into one person,
They've done
and
that.
had them in it for like an episode, whereas there's no way that's going to happen that way in the books.
I think that the journey to certain major plot points might be different between books and story, but I think that
Exactly.
they're mostly going to be hitting the same kind of thing.
The journey, you're absolutely right. I guess the journey is what I'm talking about.
Because
And
let's face
you
it, a
read-
lot of the journey needs to be made for television because you can't have 5 straight episodes of Brienne wandering the Riverlands looking for
Right.
Sansa and getting absolutely nowhere.
and well, anyway, I won't spoil that either. 'Cause that's on this season too. So yeah, I agree with that. But I guess all I'm saying is that that's the reason I'm now looking forward to the books, because for the first time I was looking at the show because there's no context with the books and saying, man, that is shortened, hokey,
Man, oh
small, doesn't make sense. George Martin is gonna make that make a lot of sense as he writes it out and really fleshes out what's happening there. You know what I mean? I'm looking forward to The Winds of Winter. I think it's gonna be a great book.
All right.
I'll see you in 3 years when it comes out.
Oh, you are sad. Make me sad.
Okay, I think that's enough news and notes. That's even more than we probably ever wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
So
we got sucking on the thing, so
this is what happens
Game
with
of
Game
Thrones. Yeah. Anyway,
All right, so let's transition, if we will, to the topic du jour. That is the topic of the day, which happens to be the future of Apple. Now, I'll give you a little context as to why I thought this might be a good topic.
well, I mean, I can start.
Okay, go ahead.
Red Delicious gets a pretty bad rap. I mean, it's not the best apple, but for just a good working man's apple,
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's tasty. It's not
I
sour.
prefer- what's your favorite kind of apple?
I don't know enough about apples to, I think, really have a favorite, because it's like if I go to the store and I'm going to buy an apple, it's probably going to be a Red Delicious. Why? Because they're cheap, they're plentiful, they look good. They look like what an apple.
They're the picture of an apple.
Yeah, like if you're thinking like I'm going to give an apple to my T-shirt today, that's what you think of, a Red Delicious
If you went
apple.
to Central Casting and said, "Get me an apple,"
Boom, here's your apple.
gets you a Red Delicious.
Boom. And they're
I
huge.
actually prefer Fuji apples. They're a little sweeter.
Having said that, I do like Fuji. The only apples I really don't like are Granny Smith. I don't like the sour.
Granny Smith, huh?
Too tart.
Yeah.
Too tart.
Apple.
Not gonna do it.
I like the sweet.
Not
I
gonna
do
do
like the
it.
sweet. That's why I like Fuji's.
Yeah.
Have
you-
the topic of the program is actually not the future of apples, which
Oh.
maybe you thought was what was going on.
Oh.
Future of Apple, the company.
I
Yeah.
do want to try Pink Ladies though.
Ooh, got any in mind?
Yes.
So-
Also, have you had Graples?
no. So
I'm not letting go of the apple thing yet.
Graples.
I don't even know if they sell them anymore. They're
I-
so barely taste like grape. It's not even worth it. I was severely disappointed.
considering the grape kind of makes up the bulk of the Graples term, I would expect them to taste like grapes a little more than.
I know.
Yeah.
You're like, this is going to be this. I'm going to bite into this apple and it's going to
Predominantly
explode grape juice all over
like
my
grape.
face. It's like,
Yeah.
no, this tastes like an apple with a little bit of grape juice on it.
Well, that's actually not so bad. It's I'm sure a
That's
flavor for a Pop Tart now or something.
Grapple.
Grape.
Ooh,
Yeah.
synergy.
Yeah. It works. All boats rise.
I like subtle fruit flavors in beer. It has to be subtle there. You don't want it overpowering. But I don't want subtle fruit flavors in my fruit. I want fruit punching me in the face when I'm eating fruit.
Subtle fruit flavors like citrus flavors in your beer.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I was mostly thinking of Sam Adams cherry wheat, which I think is
Yeah.
delicious. And it's not very strong.
All right. Well,
Also, if you mix, got this from Ian, of Pat and Ian, Pat the NES Punk.
yes.
You mix half Sam Adams cherry wheat and half Guinness. Tastes like a chocolate cherry.
No thanks.
Delicious.
No.
All right, well,
Two things I don't like.
it's been a good episode, guys. We'll see you next
Yeah.
time.
This is great. Oh, we didn't even get to answer any questions.
Oh,
Well,
darn.
maybe next time.
Spend too much time on the
Yeah.
apples. The future of
Good
apples.
thing we covered the apples.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, you can actually go now.
All right, so I thought this would be a good topic because, as many of you probably saw a few months ago, we had a lot of doom and gloom because Apple had, although they had a record quarter, the growth in iPhone had stalled in a fairly major way. Okay, especially year over year. The global smartphone marketplace in general has slowed. I think we're going to be in the low single digits, maybe 1 to 2%, which is the first time it's been that way ever.
Well, I mean, at this point, I'm probably jumping on your point that you're about to make.
You are.
Yeah. So
My point is
I'll shut up.
that's those thoughts, those things are what kind of got people thinking, what the hell's going on with Apple? Apple is, to my knowledge, even to this point, is still the most valuable company in the world.
It is by a long shot. Like, it's not even close.
2/3
It's-
of their
yeah.
entire business, more than 2/3, is one thing. It's the iPhone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it dwarfs every other product that they have by almost. I mean, if iPhone were its own company, it would still be one of the largest companies in the world, right?
Yeah.
If Apple didn't make a single thing outside of just iPhone. So, what does this say? Are you on the bandwagon of the doom and gloomers? Or do you think the future of Apple is a little brighter than some of those prognosticators said at the time?
So I think a thing to note first is that Apple is not in its golden age right now.
The golden apple?
No, exactly. When did Steve Jobs die? 2012-ish?
I can't even. I think it was maybe a little bit before that. That's what it seems like to me. I don't know if it's maybe
2012. Oh, God.
Yeah, it had to have been because I was still. Yeah, it had to be. It could be 2012, 2011, 2012.
You're making me look this up. He died in 2011. Okay. In 2011, when Steve Jobs died,
Yes.
Apple's stock was about $60.
Pretty good.
It pops up within a year to 100, pops back down to about 55, like less than a year later. And then it hit its peak at 132 just about a year ago. And it is now lost. It's now at 94. So it's 94, 132. You're going to make me do math.
That's
It's like
billions of dollars of market capitalization.
right.
For $100 a share.
Depending on how you count it, it's like 40% off its peak less than a year ago. Or about a year
Pretty
ago.
crazy.
So there's
clearly the market's reacting.
yeah.
to something.
The point is there's a downturn. All right, but beyond that, Android has taken worldwide market share increasingly for multiple reasons, which we can go into later. But
Sure.
the question is Apple doomed? That's the question on the table. And you look at, you were just asking, what's the market value of Apple? Like, how big of a company is it? It's like, its market value, latest version from last year at least, is like
Just in case you want to buy it.
$724 billion.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
insanity. The second
That's
closest is half that size, and that's ExxonMobil.
Ooh,
All right, that the world's biggest oil company is
yep.
about half the size of Apple. Now, granted, this is last year's numbers, but still.
Still.
This is a technology company that, for the most part, I know they do other stuff, but basically what they do is make phones,
Right.
and not even the world's most popular kind of phones.
Well, yeah, right. This is the best-selling phone. Actually, they just lose the number one manufacturer of cell phones in the world too, back to Samsung.
Yes, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I believe.
So they aren't even the world's number one smartphone producer.
What they're coasting on right now is not coasting, that's the wrong term. What they're mostly banking on right now is their cachet in the tech world, which, let's face it, lots of tech companies do.
Oh, absolutely.
And the obscene amounts of, I hate to use that term, but the obscene amounts of profits they make per unit on pretty much anything they sell.
Yes.
So, they're gonna be around for a while. All right.
Yeah.
They got a lot of money in the bank. They're not run by idiots. They're not making horribly dumb decisions, right? If they come out tomorrow and say, hey, you know what, guys? Forget that whole iPhone thing. We're going to stop doing that. That'd be a dumb decision.
It would be very dumb.
Having said that, there, in the sense of outside of government intervention, there is no such thing as too big to fail in terms of anything can fall apart.
Sure.
And any company in particular can be ephemeral. All right.
Especially when 2/3 of your business is locked into one place.
Oh, exactly.
If
That's what's
if
worrisome.
Something came out tomorrow that was the go-to replacement for smartphones that made smartphones look ridiculous and was over. Apple could lose over 2/3 of their business overnight. That's how crazy it is.
Oh, definitely. And that's got to be somewhat worrisome, and why you can see that they've tried to what's the word I'm looking for, to expand their market reach, right? Like the iWatch, which is, I don't believe, doing very well, right? It's not doing great.
No.
iPad is kind of hitting a brick wall. Lots of, well, again, overemphasizing. It's not that it's like dead in the water. It's just not growing like people thought it should be. You know,
Well, to a certain extent, the form factor is kind of dying too. You know, I mean, the tablet is kind of a
that's more of a tablet problem, less of an iPad problem. The problem
Absolutely.
is iPad is the generic term for tablet.
the same way that iPhone is still kind of the same. You know,
Right.
I mean, I hear people use iPhone interchangeable with smartphone all the time. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, this is market saturation at its best, and the issue is that before, I would say people were. I mean, well, you know, if you think about smartphones and how frequently you upgrade, it was always really a mechanism that was defined by innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was so much stuff to do. If you look at what the first iPhone could do in 2007 and what a phone could do in even 2 years later, in 2009, it was drastically different, drastically better, right? We've kind of hit a peak there too. It's almost like there's not really much more you can do with these things besides cram in better batteries. And even the app boom is kind of over. I mean, even the software part of it is kind of over.
In some ways, and you know what? Remember early on in particular when Android was first getting out the gate, that was all of Apple's advertising was, man, look at how much stuff we got in the App Store.
Right.
And Google's up there now. It doesn't matter. I don't even know how many program or apps there are in either App Store. It's to the point of, like you're saying, saturation. If you need something, it's probably available for both devices in terms of apps. So that's not a competitive advantage anymore. So that's my question to you is, what is Apple's competitive advantage at this point?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's an interesting, because if you look at innovation, right? So the innovation, you know, I'll call it innovation quotient we just talked about, right? So looking forward, how has Apple innovated in their phones in the last few years? And the answer is they really haven't.
What about outside their phones?
Um,
I mean, they try with the Apple Watch. They keep doing
yeah,
things with
but
Apple TV.
I wouldn't call that innovative. I mean,
Yeah, that's the thing.
the Apple Watch. Part of the reason that I think the Apple Watch didn't do as well is because it's not particularly innovative. Um, I mean, there are definitely moonshot projects at Apple, right?
Okay,
I mean,
yeah, and that's
Apple is hiring a lot of people to make a car because they
yeah.
think the car is going to be the next thing that people are replacing as a technology element of their home and not necessarily just the transportation mechanism, right?
Hmm.
Um, my my feeling is what's very clear to me and what I think is clear to the industry is that Apple right now is working on probably a lot of things, hoping that one of them is the next iPhone. Because I just don't know how much shelf life. The innovation has slowed down so much in smartphones that people are refreshing their smartphones much slower now
And
because there's really no reason.
that's the thing I was gonna say like 10 minutes ago. Is like part of the saturation of the market is that you don't need to update your phone every year. You don't need to
Yep.
update it every 2 or 3 years. The phones are good
Not
enough
more.
now to last a good long time, unless they're physically damaged beyond repair. Which is,
Right.
I mean, I had my last phone, it was the Samsung Note 2. I had that for 3 years, and I was going for longer until it just died completely.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I guess I need a new phone now. That's the only reason. That's the first time I upgraded my phone, because its functional life had ended. You know,
Yes.
um, I have no
But
idea
see,
when I'll get another
I
phone.
had two Android phones that I had actually put. Now this is an Android. This is an issue, right? So this is welcome to the new world of Android or the old world of Android. I had two Android phones, two full versions of Android phones, where I eventually abandoned the carrier images on them, put a hacked ROM on the phone to give it new life, to keep going with it because it had reached its life if I had kept the bloatware and garbage from the carrier on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because they weren't updating to new versions of Android, I had no choice, right? The thing was either going to slow down beyond all measure, or I was going to have to try to breathe some new life in it and put a new operating system on it. Well, I think by and large those problems are being remedied by Google. They're not gone, but they're being remedied. The one thing to say about Apple, because they have so much control over the device, specifically the device that they make themselves, when they release a new version of iOS, everybody has it. I mean, 2/3 of the entire population has it within like a week,
Yeah.
right? When Android does an upgrade, I just got Marshmallow on my Galaxy Note 4, and it's great. I love it. It's fantastic. I'm ready to go to Android N on my Nexus 7 from 2013 because it's a Nexus device,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, why did I have to wait 6, 7 months for the brand new version of Android on a phone that could clearly handle it? I mean, it's got friggin' 8-core CPU in it. I think it can handle new versions of Android, right?
Right.
I mean, my I mean, if you really think about it, my cell phone has more cores in its CPU than my PC does, right? So I think it can handle it. So there is a physical limitation on the silicon that we can push into these devices. So we can't make processors smaller and smaller and smaller and more powerful. There's a limit, right? Until somebody invents a quantum computer or something drastic goes on, right?
Yeah. In theory, that'll take a little bit of time at least.
Take a little bit of
But
time.
yeah.
And things will get incrementally better, but they won't be tremendously better like before. If you bought a phone in 2008 versus a phone that you would get in 2011, it's like night and day. The
Sure.
size, the speed, the capabilities.
It's ridiculous. Oh, I mean, I can't remember who had the article. It was about a year ago where they basically it was exhaustive. It was an awesome article, multi-part series really of articles where they went through every iteration of Android The person who was writing the article and showing, like, first tech site, of course, but it's like, hey, here's pictures, here's what the home screen looked like, here were the features, and like he had major problems trying to get it to even run.
Oh yeah.
On these old devices, old being 5-6 years ago.
Right.
And it seems like an archaic dinosaur. It's ridiculous.
Things change quickly.
In the
Things
world
change
of
quickly in this
smartphones
world.
in particular, it's been ridiculously quick.
But it was ridiculously quick. I would argue that now things are not really that.
The innovation's
ridiculously
elsewhere.
quick
The innovation lies elsewhere.
So, but here's the thing. I have a funny feeling. I mean, what I have seen from the iPhone. So I had a good friend of mine who gave me a long speech about how the size of the iPhone 4 was the greatest size for a phone that had ever been and ever will be, right?
Trying to think about who this is now.
And then as soon as the iPhone 6 came out, huge phone, right? This is the greatest phone that's ever. And I'm like, you told me that you would never buy a phone bigger than that. Anyway, the other than the size of the device, right? I would argue the last two generations of Apple phones have been exactly the same as the ones before. Literally nothing different except for a millimeter or two in the thickness of the phone. That's it. Now, and I'm not saying Android's any better. I'm not trying to say that.
No. It's about the same.
Yeah. What I will say though is that I have a funny feeling that there's got to be the next great thing to happen to smartphones, or else that trend is going to continue.
So the next big thing. Sorry, go ahead. You were about to say something.
Well, I'm worried because the next iPhone is supposed to lack a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which I think is the greatest injustice to consumers I can ever think of. Right?
How many people really use that still? I mean, I'm not a fan of it.
What?
But I'm not a fan
Use
of them.
3.5 millimeter headphone jack?
Yes.
Everyone in the world. Have you ever
Really?
walked down the street?
Really?
Yes.
Bluetooth? Have you heard of Bluetooth?
I've heard of Bluetooth.
Welcome
Bluetooth
to the 21st century.
wasn't even usable for anything other than taking telephone calls until the last iteration, Bluetooth 4.
Okay.
Low power Bluetooth.
Okay.
And you know what else it still has? It's a
Bluetooth
battery.
everything now.
You know what else you have to do? You have to have a separate DAC. You have to have a digital analog converter. So you don't even know what you're getting out of the product.
I'm not a fan, but I don't think it's going to be the biggest injustice in the history of the world.
I think it's terrible. I really do. There's no reason in the world to move away from the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. There's no reason in the world to do it.
I mean, I agree. I think it's
Unpowered.
The thinness chase is overblown. My point, or a point of mine, is that in both Android and Apple, you're seeing the slowdown in hardware innovations. I think now it lies in the software, which Google very openly chases. They very openly they have all sorts of like betas and blah blah blah, because what does Google do? They do AI. They do tracking, tracking, yes, but data manipulation. They are the company, along with a few others, people like SAS and so forth. They do lots of data engineering.
Power to know.
But I mean, Google is like, that is how they have gotten so big. I think we discussed a few episodes ago something along the lines of, man, when Google first came up with their IPO, we were both like, that's silly. What the hell are they going to make? Why are they worth that much? And then they just exploded from there. Why? Because they were able to do ads the best, and they still can on the internet. The lifeblood of the internet is advertising, and they're able to target it where they need it to go, and they know so much about us that we'll never know.
And when you say
people.
us, you mean us as an aggregate. You mean
exactly,
us as a demographic,
which is
you mean
way
us as
more
a geography, us as everything.
And that's way more. That's way more useful for them to know what white men in their mid-30s living on the East Coast of the United States want from our lives, more than what Rue and the Commodore alone want. It's the aggregate data that's important to them, and they can manipulate that and learn from it and use that better than anyone. Which is
why I would argue that is always going to be valuable.
Oh, of course,
and not only is it always going to be valuable, it's always going to be valuable regardless of hardware. And Apple, by and large, as you said, is a hardware company. Right?
That's a
Tell
good
me that the
question.
new versions of iOS
That's a
are
very
the
good
reason that
question.
people are buying iPhones.
I mean,
You think so?
some people. The thing is, they're both. In the same way that Google is mostly a software company, but they also do a little bit of hardware. Well,
Yeah, sure.
Alphabet does a lot of stuff,
I
but
would argue,
for the
though,
most
that
part, it's
Google at its
software.
heart is a software company.
Yes, and
Apple was
Apple,
born as a hardware company.
they've. I would say they're more a hardware company than anything else. Sure, right
Yes.
now. But they have a lot in software development. I think this is part of these moonshot projects you're talking about. The
It is.
ability to create a self-driving car, like Apple is supposedly working on, the ability to have an assistant like Siri and artificial intelligence, which I don't think anyone would really. Oh, I don't think anyone could successfully argue that Siri is a more powerful artificial intelligence than OK Google.
Oh, God.
And Google is absolutely astounding with what they have already rolled out to people in their virtual assistant.
Right. Some of the things that they do is just awesome compared to. I even had this conversation recently, and it's like we'll do the same search between a OK Google and a
Yeah.
Siri, and it's like the results are not even
And the
comparable.
thing is, I mean, we talk about Google because they're the main Apple competitor in the phone market. But if you're talking
Yes.
about all sorts of other stuff and like what is the next thing in tech that's going to be
Yeah.
taking over the world,
Yeah.
people in the chat talking about Facebook, which I kind of disagree with. I would not be shocked to see Facebook go down the rabbit hole in another 10, 20 years in some way or another. But they're certainly trying. They need
Yeah. They're
advertising as well.
diversifying.
They're diversifying. They're trying. They're doing a lot of artificial intelligence stuff too. But I think these moonshot projects do exist at Apple, but they're not as openly discussed or known about.
Yeah. Well, that's because Apple,
Compared
by
to
and
something
large, is a
like
very
Google.
protective
Sure.
company. They're like
Sure.
Nintendo.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people have, for years, have been comparing Nintendo in the video game world to Apple in the tech world. It's very
Tight control of hardware,
Yeah.
tight control of that software deployment experience.
controlling the whole experience as one, right?
Yeah, the full ecosystem rather than just one part of it.
Very interesting point.
Yeah, so this is where I was going to go too. I like the context of where things are going, right? Because if you look at some of the biggest companies in the world that I think have a great edge moving forward, right? You mentioned one of them, Google. You can talk about Facebook. You can talk about Amazon, right? These are companies that, by and large, are valuable in the data they have, number one, but they're also valuable in what they can do with that data. And they are also really working very hard to make that data available, useful, and impactful autonomously almost at every juncture. There is no doubt in my mind, and I think this is not even an arguable point. I think Google is almost a full generation, not just a step, almost a full generation ahead of everyone else in this race. Doesn't mean that they won't be caught and beaten, right? Mm-hmm. But they're ahead in that particular arena, right? So let's take that focus and let's look at Apple. What is Apple's cloud platform? They don't have one. I mean, you have iCloud, but that's to back up your photos. That's
Right.
Nobody's using that to spin up new virtual machines and deliver better applications. Not happening. Every single one of those. Facebook doesn't either. But that's one of the reasons why I would argue Facebook is not the next big thing, right? But Amazon and Google do. Microsoft does, right? A myriad of companies are coming out of the woodwork to be able to do these kinds of things. My point is, no one has that complete package like I think Google and really Amazon do, because Apple lacks the capability to have, number one, a cloud platform that they've got that they can do the analytics on, that they can do even if they had some kind of an artificial intelligence breakthrough, they don't have the capability to deploy it, right? Mm-hmm. And if you've looked at the things that Apple's put out after Google, and the map incidents is the easiest one to point at, where Apple puts out Apple Maps, says it's just as good as Google Maps, and people start using it, and they end up like in the middle of a parking lot in Nowheresville, and you were like, oh crap, I better get the Google Maps, right? You can see how the stuff that you and I try, it's almost like an intangible, right? The full generational leap ahead that Google has in analytics, in artificial intelligence, manifests itself in real ways for users. That I think could be a much bigger detriment to Apple than the fact that iPhone refresh sales are slowing down.
I could see that definitely. Um, Interesting chat going on right now, where Tiger Wolf mentions that Apple's competitive advantage, and I'm wondering what you could think of this. Apple's competitive advantage is their mesh of things, which they can control through proprietary hardware. Basically, if you want your walled garden, you go to Apple. If you want like a really nice experience, like we were just talking about with the Nintendo thing, you want it from beginning to end. It's all controlled by Apple. It just works, quote unquote. You know,
Yep.
the real question I have, I mean that works well in the late 2000s when not only not only is it curated from beginning to end, the whole Apple experience, but they're also, it's the best in town.
Yeah.
I don't think you can really say that anymore with a straight face,
No.
in terms of almost anything Apple provides.
Well,
iPhone,
here's the
iCloud, iPad.
if you have somebody that has never used a mobile operating system before and you put Android in front of them and you put iOS in front of them, it's a 50-50 shot in my mind, right?
Yeah.
People gravitate one way or the other, but they're perfectly justifiable. This
And
is not
I'm not,
religion,
yeah, and I'm not
right?
saying that Android's OS is by and large much better than iOS. I'm just saying it's not a very clear winner.
No. However, the walled garden concept is a good one. Is a good way to think about it, right? Because the reason that I still see folks gravitating in that direction, if they do, and I don't fault them for it, I even recommend that they do it in many cases, is because the walled garden of Apple makes sense. So Androids, which I thought was brilliant, their recent advertising campaign, which is be together, not the same. In
I
other
mean, they've
words,
always been
don't
great at advertising.
yeah, we don't have to have the same damn phone that looks the same damn way with the same damn app drawer all the time. Same app, same everything in order to be cool, right? Do whatever you want to do, customize it however you want to customize it, and we'll collaborate in the meantime using the device, right? And I think that's a great idea. However,
Best of the worst.
I think to a certain extent, right? People choose the Apple product line and they choose the walled garden because it's be together and the same has a lot of value too.
Yes.
So it used to be iTunes, right? I used to tell people if you use iTunes for music, stay with the Apple stuff. It just makes total sense. Don't even bother working with Android. I think a lot of people have gravitated away from iTunes, particularly losing all their entire music collections and throwing money down the cliff. But nowadays, you know what it is? It's two things in my mind. It's iMessage and FaceTime.
Yes, that's a good
iMessage
point.
and FaceTime. Now, iMessage, if anybody wants, some people said iCloud as when I started talking about the cloud before. That is not what I'm talking about. iCloud is a hard drive in the sky, and any moron can do that. Now, iMessage is a differentiator, right? But again, the only reason it's a differentiator is because Apple has such tight control on the hardware. They deploy it, they give it to you, you buy it. You don't even pick a default. When you launch to send a message on an iPhone, it doesn't ask you how you want to do it. It says, "Okay, you're on iMessage. Next question," right? There are similar and analogous services, WhatsApp, Hangouts, etc., right? On the Google platform, but it's not a part of the fabric of the device the way it is on iPhone. So people go, "I'm going to do a video chat." No, they don't say that. What do they
No.
say? I'm going to
I'm gonna FaceTime.
FaceTime.
Yeah.
That is until that to me is the differentiation for Apple in the phone market right now, and that's not going anywhere. It's
As
not
long
going anywhere.
as long as they continue to have those, whatever it is, but those what's it called when something a brand name becomes ubiquitous, like Xerox or Kleenex. As long as they have a few of those things like that For the longest time, people would say, "Oh, do you have an iPhone?" If you had a touchscreen phone, people know a little bit better now, but or mostly they do know better actually. But now, if you're doing, and I know several people who's like, I didn't want an iPhone, but I had to do it for FaceTime because to use it with my family members, you know.
Exactly.
And that's very powerful. That they're still ubiquitous in certain ways like that. So,
And I hate to say it, but you can cater to the least technological denominator.
sure,
So you know,
which is fine.
know.
You sell a lot of units that way.
Well, I know, but and I was the one that used to tell you when I was the Mac fanboy.
Where
The reason I love Macintosh is because it just works and you know it's easy to use, and in other words, it's the same exact mantra of iOS right now, which is if your grandmother picks up an iPhone, oh, this is how you video chat, this is how you FaceTime.
you just press this button, easy.
You pick this contact and you hit the FaceTime button and you move on with life. It's that simple. If I want to do that on Android, forget it, right? I mean, I gotta call them. I gotta tell them to install an app. I gotta tell them what the app is. I gotta have them create an account. You know what I'm saying? You gotta go through all these different processes. Now you get the exact. Forget the fact that it is the exact same experience. Okay. It takes so many more iterative steps that it's not practical, and that's what Apple does better than anybody else. And part of that is their proprietary control of their hardware. I
That definitely. I mean that.
So here's another question for you.
It provides a certain advantage, and I think at this point also a disadvantage. But it's what they have.
Nothing's perfect,
and
right?
I think they're able to use that better than most companies would.
So here's a question.
Obviously.
So obviously Google has produced the Nexus line, which is meant to be kind of the pro user kind of concept.
Sure. The Google experience concept.
Google
I wouldn't
experience.
even necessarily say pro user.
Yeah, I agree with that. Right. If you want to know what Android, the best and the best that Android has to offer at any one moment.
You want the Google
You get a Nexus.
version of an iPhone, that you
Yes.
get a Nexus.
You get a Nexus.
None of this other bullcrap involved.
Well, maybe not. And this is what I was going to ask you about. So the news did break this week that Google is potentially trying to offer in the year 2016 a phone that is Google manufactured that is not a Nexus device.
Right.
What do you think that says about Google's envy of the position of Apple? Or does it? Or does it say anything? Or is that really not? Am I missing the point?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, Google knows that Apple is a huge competitor, and naturally, you want to try to get some of that competitive advantage back from if someone has something like that. You know, it's like Coke tried to emulate the sweeter initial taste of Pepsi in the 80s because, you know, the Pepsi challenge, if anyone walks up and they just have a sip of a drink, Coke versus Pepsi, most people are going to choose Pepsi because it's sweeter in that first bite, right?
Right.
And so that's how New Coke came about, you know, because they're trying
New
to
Coke.
nullify that competitive advantage. It didn't work. Obviously. Well, yeah, whatever. You could argue that it made Coke more popular than ever afterward. But the point being, I think that this whole Google phone and even the Nexus program in general is their shot to try to emulate that not walled garden experience, but that pure top to bottom experience. But
don't they do that with Nexus? I mean, I don't.
Well, yes.
Why is Nexus different than?
But they
this,
don't.
This,
but
this
the problem is that Nexus phones have been always built by another company.
Right.
And Google is now, with the Pixel C, starting to dip their toe into their own hardware creation. And I think it's more born out of that than as a direct response to Apple. I think they've been responding to Apple for a while with the Nexus program. I think this is probably the next iteration of that, where they're like, hey, we really want this pure Google experience. Let's make the hardware. You know,
so what happens to Samsung and all these other parties that?
Well, they'll probably be pissy, but I mean, Samsung's fine. A lot HTC's not, but
co-opetition.
Yeah,
HTC is building the next Nexus, the next two Nexus phones.
Sure.
which probably will be my next phone because God knows I'm never buying a Samsung ever again.
Nexus 6 is awesome, and I miss Motorola already. But
I'm gonna have as long as they don't really screw up the next HTC Nexus, I'm buying that one. Anyway, all right.
yeah.
So we talked a lot about it. I think it's good, right? I mean, Apple is clearly trying to bank on some next gen home runs like the car. I think
Yeah, but
their
there's
competitive differentiation in the current market is great, but they're really trying to find that next thing, be it the Apple Watch, be it the car, whatever it may be. But I think they're at a significant, I would argue they are at a significant disadvantage in almost every arena because to me, the next best thing is an experience in software that comes from analytics and computer analytics and not necessarily a hardware experience. And they're a generation behind in that.
I would agree. Um, So, before we move on, because it sounds like we're about wrapping up, I just want to bring up one other thing because we were talking about, or I was talking about at least the ephemeralness of companies. I remember back when we were in college, so not that long ago, a little over a decade ago, we would have, well, we had discussions about lots of things, but pardon me, but one of those things was like Walmart. Walmart was
Yes.
the behemoth around
Yes.
2000, and people were, well, I mean, people still argue about it, but like things like, oh yeah, Walmart is like 7% of the U.S. economy or something like that. I can't remember the
Yeah.
exact term
Yeah.
or knowledge, but whatever.
Yeah.
And I think I remember, well, I do remember us talking, and one of us said something like, or we at least agreed that, no company lasts on top forever,
No.
and Walmart will be no different. And
Yep.
not that Walmart's in the gutter now. They're no
No.
Kmart, but Amazon has eaten Walmart's lunch pretty handily over the past decade or so. And they are not what they once were.
No.
I think we can agree.
And
So-
there's also a significant image hit there too that Walmart took for a number of different reasons, deserved or undeserved. But I agree. And I mean, look, Walmart is, if you want to know, this is what I love about a show like South Park, right? When they do the Walmart episode that South Park did is top to bottom just a phenomenal episode. The crux of it is this. Walmart comes in and closes all these mom and pop stores, which is what everybody was complaining about in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
We don't want Walmart here. If Walmart moves in, they're going to they're going to kill all the mom and pop stores. Okay. True. Or at least to some extent true. And then what ends up happening is, so everybody revolts and takes down evil, terrible Walmart. And then what happens is that somebody else who started a small, department store type thing gets more popular, more popular, more popular. Everybody starts shopping there and it becomes the next Walmart.
Right.
Right. That's the joke.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So which is absolutely true, right? Because when you think about it, Walmart started just the way that any other business did, right? They happened to be particularly good. Maybe they got lucky here or there. They had a couple really, really good moves. Their supply chain side, which is really by and large why Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple, because he was a supply chain guy, right? He took the Walmart model and applied it to Apple. So, what's the next thing, right? Amazon started as a book website,
If we knew the
and now
next
they're
thing,
eating Walmart's lunch.
if we knew the next thing, we'd be rich. But I wanted to bring this up before we move on because I think it's interesting. If you were to think of, if I were to ask you, hey, give me a list of the biggest, most important companies in U.S. capitalism, what would you look to?
Yeah, capitalism. You mean outside of the financials? If I just looked
Just the most important companies, the biggest companies.
oh, man, that's tough.
This isn't a trick question. I was hoping you would go toward the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
I was going to say something like
It's like 30 companies that make up the Dow Jones some of them shuffle in and out over time.
or the Fortune 100 or something like that.
Sure, but let's go with Dow Jones because I got that list in front of me.
Okay.
Are you curious? Less than 30 years ago, in March of 1987, some of these companies were on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the most influential and powerful companies in the country.
Yep.
Eastman Kodak, bankrupt.
General Electric.
General Electric, well, they're fine. General Motors almost went bankrupt a few years ago. All right. Bethlehem Steel, bankrupt.
Oh God! Wow.
You have a lot of companies that have been acquired, like Union Carbide. You have a company. Let's see what Sears Roebuck, which is not bankrupt, but has been it's seemingly on death's door for a while now.
Yeah.
F.W. Woolworth Company.
Oh my God.
Things like that. You have some big hitters that are still around today. Obviously, Coca-Cola, 3M,
IBM.
International Business Machines, yes, McDonald's. But the point is that less than 30 years ago, these were the creme de la creme of American enterprise, and a good third of them are on rocky patches or bankrupt.
Yep.
Apple is at the top of the heap right now. Nothing stays forever, and whether it's in 5, 10, 15 years, I mean, just look at Apple almost went out of business less than 20 years ago.
Several times.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's, you never know what's going to happen, but capitalism is a harsh mistress, but hopefully it'll bring us enough innovations.
Yeah. And arguably, this is the best time in the world to be in a startup, which is what Apple was at one point, just to, kick around a new idea. And to, by and large, they built the concept of what we now know as the startup, and which is the subject of Silicon Valley and HBO, which is a phenomenal show.
Oh, that's a great show, too.
Anyway. And, it's the same kind of culture, right? That a startup is going to come up with a next big idea, and if they play their cards right, and if they, have the same kind of luck and same kind of alleyways, then maybe they'll be the next Apple.
Boom, headshot.
Boom, headshot. All right, let's get to some questions. So as we talked about before, we have the third portion of the program, which is the question and answer portion, after we have now wrapped up the topic du jour. So if you would like to ask us a question about any of the Tids and Bits today, which happen to be predominated by Game of Thrones. You want to ask us about the topic du jour, which happened to be about the company Apple and fruit.
Oh.
Or you want to ask us any questions about life in general, video games, or other geekery.
Co-ed dorms.
Co-ed dorms, whatever, anything we've covered tonight or beyond.
We are Clan of the Grey Wolf. We talk about fruit and co-ed dorms and nothing else.
And definitely not Hamilton. If you want to tweet questions to @It'sTheCommodore, you can also find me in chat, Commodore128. Send me a private message, which is the way that I like them. And I will read the best questions. I've already got a lot of great questions, so you might want to speed that up.
Hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butts. All right. Marquise asks, if you could live in any universe, historical, futuristic, fictional, created by a book, movie, game, or show, which would it be?
Star Trek.
You think so?
I'd say Star Trek. That's one of those. Well, it's futuristic. I like futuristic, but it's also, for the most part, a very sunny disposition of the future of humanity. That's one of those. John Gene Roddenberry did a lot of things not great in his visions, especially of like Next Generation and all this other crap. But you got to admit, he did have a rosy view of the future, and it seems like a lot of fun. I would also, as a bonus, this wasn't asked, but I would say perhaps the fictional world I would least like to live in would be Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I love the story, but holy crap, does that seem like a horrible place to live?
It is. It's awful in every way.
Yeah.
And this was another one of those things. Unless you get stabbed in the stomach. And then apparently you just bounce right back with a couple bandages.
Don't get me started. Anyway.
Come on. I mean, this is my point. There's no way that happens that way in the book. Anyway. Yes. I mean, Star Trek has, I like the utopian disposition, like you said, for Star Trek by and large. Deep Space Nine's cool because it's not nearly as utopian as Next Generation, but it's not like dark and gritty like Battlestar.
That would also be a pretty crappy world to live in, although, again, an awesome show.
Yeah. Humans on the Run, not great. I'll go with a game since you went with or maybe I'll do a movie. Let's do a movie. Sheesh. Did you see the Warcraft movie, by the way? I didn't think you did.
No.
Okay.
I have a friend who I don't
Braved
think.
it.
Well, he is a fan of Warcraft, and he loved it. He watched it like twice in 2 days.
Oh my
I
god.
think if you're a fan, you'll like it. If you're not, it'll seem like generic fantasy
I
schlock.
went and just out of curiosity, I just went back and found my copy of Warcraft 3 and
Yeah,
installed it just to see what it was like. It's still awesome and fun.
I would do
Um,
Warcraft 2.
I man, there's a lot of great choices. I would say the Halo universe is pretty cool too. I could see living there. There's a lot of terrible places to be in the Halo universe, but by and large, it's kind of a neat story. Got that future, definitely not utopian, but it's got that futuristic, but not necessarily utopian and unrealistic version of society. I kind of like that realism, but not too gritty.
So a little bit of a update for our main topic. Techie is Google Foo is stronger than mine, and he pointed out. See, I made this warning earlier when we were looking at the value of Apple that it was from 2015 when they were at their peak.
Right.
But there was this is from May 12th on Fortune magazine, but Google's stock market value actually surpassed Apple. So Alphabet did, yes. So it's and that's part of Alphabet going up and Apple coming down. So I'm not exactly sure where it stands right now. I could look it up if I really wanted to, but the fact is that they're about close now.
This is also market capitalization. So all that really means is the outstanding shares.
Right.
At its current ascertained value. Is that really what a company's worth? You could argue yes, you could argue no.
Yeah, it's with lots of things in finance, it's arguable.
Yeah.
But regardless, I just wanted to put in that little asterisk. Next question.
Yeah. All right. So it's we have old data in our show, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Millennial Falcon asks, if you had Apple's money and wanted to buy a company just because you could, what would it be? And would you buy a company and shut it down just out of spite? I'm going to change the question. What company would you buy and shut down out of spite?
Okay. First out, so I think the initial question was,
What company would you buy?
What company would you pull a Zuckerberg with, like what he did with
Oculus
Rift? It's just like, I'm gonna pay $2 billion for them
Nintendo,
because why not? Buy Nintendo. I don't know if that. Well, I wouldn't shut them down, but
you would become Shigeru Miyamoto's boss.
Oh, that'd be awesome to buy Nintendo.
Change the org chart so that you were his boss.
The thing is, I might buy Nintendo. They're not in a great financial position. Is that really what I want to do with my money?
Do with anything? I asked you if you were.
Just because I'm rich doesn't mean I'm going to throw money away. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, that was going to be my comment about buying companies to shut them down, because that's like a game of whack-a-mole. If you the more companies you buy to shut them down, the more they're just going to keep coming back up.
What company would I get to shut down?
It's got to be something that you have a ton of spite against for whatever reason.
I'm sure there is one.
You hate.
I'm sure there's
a company you hate.
Yeah.
Okay.
But who?
I don't know that there's a company I hate.
Yeah, there's got to be a company you hate. Man, we're whiffing on this question.
Yeah, because I don't know. This is really a company that I hate. But if I were going to buy a company, I'd probably buy I'd probably buy something like one of the Hyperloop or something that Elon Musk has started. That's something just really cool, far out there kind of stuff.
I would definitely want to go into either video games or like tech, because that's more fun.
Really high tech stuff.
No one wants to. No
SpaceX.
one wants to buy like a widget making company for fun.
Monsanto. I could buy Monsanto.
You could, if you had a lot of money. Yeah.
A lot of money and a general distaste of GMO.
If you want to shut them down, man, could you imagine what would happen if Monsanto was shut down? People would starve.
Yeah, half the world would be without food.
Holy crap!
I know. I wouldn't do that.
That'd be badnewsbears.com.
Yeah, badnewsbears.com. What would you buy? Like for example, I could buy the Commodore company, which isn't really even a company anymore.
Oh, you could.
And I could relaunch Commodore as a computer brand.
Yeah, you could.
That's cool. I do
That's
that.
kind of like what that one guy did with Intellivision.
Oh
He used to
yeah.
be like an engineer in television, and then like in the '90s, he bought the name. Basically, he bought the company, what was left of it, and he like released Intellivision Lives games for current consoles and Wayback devices and things like that.
I like that idea.
You could do that.
It's a good
It's just
idea.
fun money.
Do that with Commodore.
Anyway, next question.
I don't think I hate a company enough to buy them and shut them down, by the way.
I'll come up with something later. It'll pop
Okay.
up in my head, I'm
Yep.
sure. Can I buy Duke and
Um,
shut them down?
Do what?
Can I buy Duke and shut them down?
No.
Do they count?
They're private. You probably could buy it. If
I
you really
could.
wanted to buy it, you probably could.
I think I could.
Yeah.
I could go for that.
Make it do a ghost town in the middle of Durham. Anuvong asks, what game shows have you two always wanted to be in?
Jeopardy.
I I would be I would I
Done.
would be so nervous I couldn't play Jeopardy.
No, but it'd be fun. Actually, most of the quiz shows, Win Ben Stein's Money would have been great back in the day.
That would have been a good one, yeah. The quiz shows that don't have as much pressure, like where you have to answer quickly, where the it's like a rat. There's a show now.
You want Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
That too, but there's a good one on now. It's called like crap. It's called like 50 questions or something like that. Have you seen this?
No.
It's a show where like it's a huge set. It's like and they bring somebody on and they have to answer like it's like 100 questions. It's even more than that. It's like maybe it's even more than that. But basically, your goal is to answer 100 questions, and you win $1 million or something like that. Right?
Oh, that's a lot of
But
questions.
the issue is that people come on that are challenging you in specific subject matter to try to become the next person to answer 100 questions or whatever, right? So like they'll come on and like there'll be categories and you get to pick the category. You're like, I'll take opera, right? Because you know a lot about opera. Well, then all of a sudden the person that comes up like knows everything there is to know about opera. Like you don't want to do that because they're gonna crush you. And then there's questions where that you go back and forth. Like they'll say name a college mascot, and you have to go back and forth until somebody can't name one, right?
Okay.
It's cool. It's good stuff.
I think you completely made that up on the spot, but all right.
Yeah, I'd go on that show. It's a good show.
I would certainly not want to go on shows that are more physical. I know that that would be terrible, like Guts or even Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Right.
And certainly
Which
not.
happen to be both of Anuvong's picks, by the way. So the
Oh yeah.
the person that asked
Double
the question,
Dare, no good.
absolutely, you just crapped all over their
No,
choices.
no bueno. And also, I'm no good at word puzzles, so no. What's it called?
Yeah, I
for
could do
me?
Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of
I could do-
Fortune. No.
I'm terrible at Wheel of Fortune. I don't know what it is. Family Feud. I'm terrible at Family Feud.
Yeah, I like Family Feud, but no. You know what I want to play? Tic Tac Toe.
Tic Tac Toe.
That would be.
How about
Joker's Wild?
Joker's Wild? Now you're reaching.
The Newlywed Game.
Press your luck.
No whammies.
No whammies.
That's
Nah,
complete luck.
it's complete luck.
I don't want the luck games.
Didn't the guy that figured the show out, he found out it wasn't luck, and then he ended up winning.
And then he like died a drug addict or something, penniless.
Well, hey man.
Didn't turn out well for him. Anyway.
No. Well, that's what happens if you
do
just
you
sit
have
around
it?
and study game shows.
Guts. Ooh, Starcade or Nick Arcade would have been fun.
Nick Arcade was kind of stupid.
Nick Arcade was Starcade would have been better.
That's stupid. Lupacillo asks, do you believe that PC games are making a resurgence in the mainstream? And he includes Warren Spector believes so, just in case there was any pressure to answer no.
I would say yes, but that was the other topic you brought up was the death of console gaming.
Yeah.
I would say yes, it is making a comeback mainly because pretty much anything
Spoil the next go. Oh.
Sorry. Anything non-Nintendo created. Like pretty much any big game on PlayStation or Xbone is also out for the freaking PC.
Yes.
Which is why I still don't have an Xbone or a PS4 because I'm like, what's the point? I can just buy it on the PC. And as I told Commodore right before the show. He'll be happy. I'm finally updating my PC. You talk about not updating something for like 7 years. I'm finally getting my first PC since we started playing the Grey Wolf. My first new PC.
So go
So,
Windows 10, or else this might be the last episode.
oh, I'm
Ever.
going Windows 10, baby.
Oh boy, it's
Throw caution to the
this
wind.
might not end well. Just know, folks, when we put the schedule out there, you don't see us, you know why. Um, Okie dokie. How
Hokey dokey,
about
smoky pokey.
yeah? Um, the Tiger Wolf asked a question that we kind of answered in some way, but I think we could answer it a different way. Tiger Wolf asked, "What does Apple do better than Google?" Since
Oh,
both of us are fanboys, we need to talk about that.
I mean, I think, well, maybe you can answer it better. I was going to say something like, we already mentioned the walled garden concept. Although even then, okay, walled garden that's a very negative connotation, but also kind of apt.
I would say catering to the least technical.
What was it? Making things easy to understand is very good. What someone was saying, they had a better way, a nicer way of saying the walled garden thing earlier. I can't remember who it was or what they said, but basically the whole thing about like integration of mesh of things is what it was. I actually think Google might be better at that now, because like all the Google products that you use on your phone, on your Google phone or Android phone, Gmail, Google Maps, Google Docs. You can
Keep.
I love Keep. You can
Photos.
You can access through your Wi-Fi and Google Fiber, or when you're away from home, you can use your Project Fi on your Nexus phone, which is Google Run. It's like they might not be. Google might. Okay, Google has more services in their mesh of things. I think you could argue that Apple still does it better with the integration,
Yes.
iTunes notwithstanding, because I don't know anyone who likes iTunes.
Yes. But they do it almost in a Microsoftian manner, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Microsoft Internet Explorer was the number one browser for forever because it came with PCs, and they got in a lot of trouble for that. Seems to me like iMessage and FaceTime are two apps that also come loaded, and everybody just kind of says, "Great, use it forever." Maybe that's because people feel like by and large it's a good experience on there, whereas Internet Explorer wasn't always a very good experience. Maybe.
All right, I'm gonna put a 5-minute warning on you with the question. So,
All right. Pond Life asks, have you ever performed on stage, not counting panels? If so, do you ever miss it?
well, we were both in band.
Yep.
Also, you were in an a cappella group.
Was in an acapella group.
So the answer is yes. Do you miss it?
I miss performing almost more than I miss anything else. I miss it every single day. Yeah, so
There's a certain
played,
rush. There's a certain rush.
played
to it.
with I mean I played with a rock band, right? A couple different
That's
ones.
true.
Played with a ska band, played with
Wow.
a rock band,
I forgot.
did acapella, did band. I did just about everything, and I miss that all the time. I don't miss being in bars until 2 o'clock in the morning and then cleaning up your stuff and getting out and smelling like smoke for the rest of the night. I don't miss, trying to get people out to gigs and things like that when you're playing places that aren't necessarily the best.
That was some fun
but
stuff,
I miss,
though.
But yeah, I miss the whole experience. I do. I don't think you ever really outgrow that.
I'm gonna say, so yeah, I mean, yeah, performing on stage and like band and stuff, but I'm gonna go and say, which we both were in, was marching band in college at a big university, and that's not a stage per se; it's a field. But that, to me, was so much fun. It's like by far, well, one of the most exciting things about going to college or from my college experience, I should say. And that's something I miss. It is very, very few things give you a rush like going out onto a field in front of 60,000 people.
Yeah.
And performing. I mean, you're not by yourself. You're with you and like 300 of your best friends, but still, you're close knit friends. But
Pretty good.
there you go.
Pretty good. Yeah, so I miss it every day. The Jake Ott asks for a Q&A. According to the movie Jobs, Steve Jobs believed Apple's product line diversification was their major downfall in their position in the late 90s post-Microsoft GUI lawsuit environment. Do you think that Apple's branching out into spaces like the watch and the car puts them at a prior to Jobs return level of risk?
Ooh, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say no, and part of that is because the market was very different back then. I think people were much less tech savvy by and large, and the concept of having a Lisa, a Macintosh, you know, you had the Newton, you had all these different things that Apple was trying to make, right? Apple's line of printers, Apple's line of all-in-one computers, Apple's non all-in-one standard computers, right? The open Apple concept where you could buy an e-machine or whatever they were called that were like Macs that were Hackintoshes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the world was very different back then, and I think what Steve Jobs saw was that if you really made things simple and you gave people something that was useful, but made them say wow at the same time. The first time you use something, you say wow, this is amazing, but it ends up being useful. That was what he was really good at identifying. If the first time people use an Apple car, they go, I've driven my entire life, but this is amazing and I can't live without this. Then no, I don't think their diversification level puts them at any kind of risk. That being said, your point is still the valid one. You can't be number one forever. You just can't. And there's going to be competition and back and forth in every marketplace. And that's a good thing by and large. So they probably have a fair amount of risk anyway, which is pretty much what this whole show's about.
.com.
.com. Sky Sam Freeman, man, long time. Sky Sam Freeman's been with us. What is the game/movie that you were really hyped for, and when you played/saw it, it managed to exceed your expectations? That you were really hyped for. I mean, hyped for, right?
Can we go back to like talking about the last Game of Thrones episode, because that did exceed my expectations.
I agree. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic.
Like I was really pleasantly surprised with that.
I don't know. I would say
I'm looking at a game.
The reboot of Star Trek, the 2009 Star Trek. I was really excited about a reboot. I was really excited about a new movie, and it was better than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life. It wasn't the greatest Star Trek movie ever, but it was really good to be back in the theater, seeing Star Trek again, and with such energy and pace. It was good.
I felt that a little bit more with the latest Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Which I now think is old enough that people are finding it cool to crap all over. But at least from what I read on
forward to
Reddit.
watching that movie again outside of the hype bubble.
Yeah, no, but it was a really solid. Like you said, it felt good to be like enjoying a Star Wars movie in the theater again.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, let's get through this, like the prequels were. And I'm actually also really excited. I am that the only movie I am really excited left to see this year is Rogue One, even more than the next Star Trek movie, which I actually forgot was coming out.
Yeah.
Oh man, we didn't even talk about Anton Yelchin dying, which is really sad.
Unbelievably tragic, like the worst kind of accident possible.
Let's end up with that then. So yeah, well, very freak accident, but I did not realize he was that young. He was only 27. So this is Chekhov from the new Star Trek movies. If in case you didn't know, he died about a week or so ago. But he was actually a really promising young actor. I had the feeling he had some really good stuff in him. Have you seen the new Fright Night? New. It's like 6 or 7 years old by now, but still. You should watch that. I actually really enjoyed that, and he was in that, along with David Tennant, which is hilarious. He's from Doctor Who, in case you didn't know. But I also heard that he was very good in the movie that just recently came out, Green Room, which also had Patrick Stewart, where he basically plays a member of a band, and they play it like a white supremacist bar and things go south. Anyway,
Yes.
I heard he was very good in that. So, well, you only read good things about him online. It's very sad to see someone like that go in such a horrible, strange way. But
Yeah. No, it was just like, what the heck? And I'm sure that story's not over. It sounds like there's a lot more buried in that because, ooh boy, that could be a big problem for Chrysler.
a lawsuit, yeah, potential lawsuit waiting to happen there. So.
Apparently, there were lots of other people that suffered problems but didn't die in freak accidents with it. So it's very strange that would happen to somebody like him.
I will have to see Green Room. I think that's one of those movies you have to be in the right mood for. Speaking of being in the right mood, have you ever seen Dear Zachary?
Yes. One of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life.
That was really good. If anyone on here has not seen that or heard of it, you should watch it. It's on Netflix. Don't look up anything about it. Go into it blind, which I for the vast majority of it did.
And then jump on the roller coaster because you're going to go all over the place.
And also, this came out in like 2008, and there's a little coda on the filmmaker's YouTube channel from 2013 that's very sweet. Great movie. It's a very well done movie. It's not the greatest documentary ever, but it's done very well.
But it's it's close.
Yeah, it's a heartrending story. So
I think we need to counter the last question with this one question that I got from Tanner.
Okay.
What's a game you wanted to like but had too many problems to be enjoyable overall? So this is like the game that you wanted to really like, but it just never panned out because it had way too many problems. I have one ready because I had a chance to look at this question before you did.
A lot of games, really.
There are a lot of games, and that's why I say there's a ton to pick up. That's why I thought you'd probably jump out with one pretty quick.
Yeah.
One that sticks out in my mind: Heroes of Might and Magic 4.
I never played 4.
Oh man.
Yeah, I remember you talking about how that was not good.
That game sticks out in the series because I think every game in the series is solid, and 4 is just not good. It's not a good game. The first hexagonal field of battle that was you had your hero actually on the field as a movable character, and it was it had this weird like operatic soundtrack that didn't make any sense. The character, so they ended a lot of the staples of the franchise in terms of how the towns were built. And what your characters could do, it was really not good. But they got back to their roots in 5, and 6 is also fantastic.
I'm going to say games like Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy XII. Man, I struggled through 8. I went like 12 hours through Final Fantasy XII before I was like, I am just not enjoying this as much as I want to be. So I quit. Super Mario Sunshine is a good one like that. Populous is one I tried to like, and I think I've mentioned before is like the only game I've ever returned to the store. Damn you, whatever your name is, Lionhead Studios. Thank you, Peter Molyneux.
Yeah.
I was reading something interesting the other day about how Peter Molyneux's best received games were all from Lionhead Studios. And ever since that studio shut down, he's basically made complete crap. And it's like one of those instances where people are like, wait a minute.
George Lucas.
Yeah, like George Lucas or Gene Roddenberry. It's like, wait a minute. Maybe we're giving this guy too much credit. It was all the people around him that were doing good stuff.
Right.
Yeah, because
keeping him in check.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah. And I mean, as people, we tend to do that. We like to give people, like one person, all the credit when something goes well, and more often than not, that's misplaced. But
like Tom Brady.
That is the one instance that is... Well, okay, you're right. You're right. Bill Belichick, football genius, is also crucial to the Patriots dynasty. So let's not forget that.
It's true. All right. So we only had an hour and a half today, so that's good.
You're
on pace.
Peter, trust me, Molyneux. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's going to be great. Trust me. Yeah, so good conversation though. We had a lot of cool things come up. I think this was a little bit of a different topic than normal. We get into a little market dynamics, things like that. It was good. It was good. I enjoyed that conversation. So, thank you for indulging us as you always do. Thank you for the questions and for watching us here on the Echo Screen Live. We are, as I mentioned before, briefly, a bi-weekly podcast, and God willing, and the creek don't rise, and Windows 10 doesn't completely destroy any dreams you have of your new PC.
All right, Jim Bob, Billy Bob.
We'll be back in 2 weeks,
.com.
where we'll talk about something else completely.
Yeah, you'll never see it coming.
No idea what it is.
Nope.
We're not going to tell you, because if we told you, we could
Be cheating.
build up hype around it and try to attract more people to the program. But instead, we're going to completely hide it from you until the day of. And just keep the people that we have.
And it won't be up till an hour beforehand.
Right. And you won't even know that there's a show until it happens. That's just the way that we work. Anyway, thank you all for hanging out with us tonight on the Echo Screen Live, the official podcast of the Clan of the Grey Wolf. Until next time, for Rue, I am the Commodore. Except no imitators, and there is no reset button.
He speaks truth.
Clicking. Pharrell.
Click Game Bowl. Get hype.
Get hype.
Get hype.
Click Game Bowl. Click Game Bowl.
Thank you. That's all I got. That was the worst Get Hype video I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah.